the vent car!
Wait, what the fuck does that mean? Hey you fuckers, it's Rufus. Now last year I did a video on the groundbreaking but oft-forgotten first-person shooter Marathon, the title which launched the success of Bungie and eventually led to the creation of a little old game franchise called Halo. But before all that shit happened, Bungie released a couple of sequels to Marathon which expanded on the original and helped cement its place in the annals of video game history. Annals. So without further ado, let's take a look at the second game in the series. Marathon 2, Durandal. Yes sir, more good old-fashioned alien murder mayhem. Now the Marathon series is a pretty involved storyline, so for all you short attention span motherfuckers out there, here's a quick recap. The first game takes place in the distant future on a massive spaceship called the Marathon, where the series gets its name. You play a nameless badass cyborg security officer entrusted with protecting the ship and its human crew, and you're about to have a very bad fucking day. See, one of the computer artificial intelligences that runs the Marathon, called Durandal, or whatever, has apparently gone completely fucking insane, HAL 9000 style. Deciding that he wants to gain his freedom from his human masters, he reaches out to a bunch of alien douchebags and invites them to come attack the ship. Now these particular alien douchebags are called the Four, and they just love conquering other species and making them their slaves, so a big fuck-off tin can full of thousands of humans looks pretty damn good to them. The Four and all of their various slave creatures attack the Marathon and begin enslaving the crew, and you're the only security guy left to fight these motherfuckers. The ship does have two other AIs who are on your side, Tycho and Leela, but they both eventually get taken over by the Four, leaving you on your own to save the day. At the end of the game, 25-year-old spoiler alert, you successfully defeat the Four and save the Marathon like a big old badass. Meanwhile, Durandal has teamed up with some of the newly freed Four slaves, a race of cyborgs called the Svit. Together they steal the Four ship and go fuck off to explore the universe together, which as it turns out was their plan all along. See, even though you did heroically save the ship from aliens, you were also kinda just a pawn in Durandal's plans the whole time, eliminating the Four so he could escape with his new Svit buddies. Anyway, that's where the first game ends. Now getting the full prologue to Marathon 2 requires, once again, reading the fucking manual because 1995. But I'll sum it up real quick. Marathon 2 takes place 17 years later. Durandal and the Svit are still rolling around the universe in the stolen Four ship. After searching for years, they have finally found the ancient homeworld of the Svit called Lawan. But wouldn't you know it, it's full of Four motherfuckers. Durandal successfully blasts all their spaceships out of the sky, but they've got a whole bunch of troops down on the planet as well, and naturally Durandal and the Svit want to take these dudes out too. But what does this have to do with you? Well, it turns out after the events of the last game, they kidnapped your ass, threw you in stasis, and took you with them. Apparently you did such a good job killing all the Four back on the Marathon that they want you to take care of them here as well, acting as the brawn to their brains. So they teleport you down to the planet and command you to kick all the asses. And that's where Marathon 2 begins. Fuck yeah, 90s industrial rock. Makes you want to kill stuff!
Get me out of here!
So right from the start, this game has a few pretty noticeable differences from the first one. You're no longer fighting inside cramped, dark spaceships, but in large outdoor environments on the planet's surface. Gone is the constant cheesy music, replaced with ambient sounds from the world around you. You'll also notice the humans, known as Bobs, are no longer useless fucking idiots who just run around screaming and dying all the time. Turns out Durandal got all the human slaves from the Marathon to volunteer as his own personal army, giving them weapons and cybernetic enhancements. So they're actually kind of helpful now, although you can totally still just shoot them if you feel like being a dick. The levels now feature basic water physics as well, which they use pretty liberally throughout the game. You can swim, which you'll be doing a lot, so the oxygen gauge on your suit, which barely got any action in the first game, is finally put to some use. The water levels can change at the flip of a switch, which becomes important for navigating certain levels, and there are also tides that can push you around, as well as hot lava, which I do not recommend taking a dip in. The arsenal of weapons has been tweaked a bit with new graphics and slightly different physics, but there's really only a couple of brand new guns, a pretty sweet alien flamethrower, and a badass double-barreled shotgun. Taking a page straight from Doom 2, eh, Bungie? Except in Marathon 2 you can dual wield them because fuck yeah. Durandal frequently teleports extra weapons and ammo to your position on the planet, and I once again appreciate that the Marathon series breaks with most first-person shooters and actually explains why the fuck there are so many guns lying around. The developers have relented a bit and added the occasional health power-up and oxygen tank you can pick up, but for the most part you still have to run around and find recharge stations for oxygen, health, and even just to save your game. Durandal explains at the very first terminal that he upgraded your human battle armor so you can use the alien rechargers and save points, and I like that it's actually addressed this time around. Yes, comment section, I am now aware that this was technically accounted for in the first game when you pick up that mysterious alien device, but I still say that shit was pretty vague. Durandal has also hacked your suit with a translator so you can read not just English, but for and svit as well. So the terminal messages become much more interesting because you can understand the conflict from all sides. Besides all that though, the gameplay of Marathon 2 is pretty much identical to the original, so go watch my first video if you want a full rundown. Basically, you explore a big-ass non-linear level, shoot the fuck out of all the bad guys, read all the computer terminals, accomplish the various mission objectives you're given, keep shooting the fuck out of all the bad guys, find the exit, and teleport to the next level. Repeat 28 times and you win the game. Marathon 2, like the original, also features a multiplayer deathmatch mode and comes with 13 original maps. It also adds new game modes like King of the Hill, Tag, Co-op, and Kill the Man with the Ball, or in this case, the Skull. Altogether, Marathon 2 continues the traditions of the series, mixing fast-paced alien murder mayhem with a complex and compelling storyline, aka a shitload of reading. But it does so with a lot of intelligence and style, and it definitely makes a worthy sequel to the original. After the success of the first Marathon, which was a big hit with Mac gamers, it didn't take much time for Bungie to start work on Marathon 2, which came out just under a year later. It was similarly well received, getting great reviews and selling around 200,000 copies. But again, it was overshadowed by the Doom series, with Doom 2 selling about 1.5 million copies around the same time. Still, it was enough of a success for Bungie to keep on making games, leading to a third Marathon release the following year, and eventually inspiring the entire Halo franchise. So what made this game such a success? Firstly, I'm happy to say that the compelling storyline that made the first game so unique is still very much alive and well in the sequel. This time around, the terminals feature full-color graphics to help illustrate the story, as well as color-coded messages from all the different alien species, giving a lot more depth and context to the events of the game. As you progress, you find out that you're not just here to kick a bunch of 4-ass, but also to find the ancient Svit computers and discover their secrets. See, legend has it there were originally 11 different clans of the Svit, but only 10 were ever enslaved by the 4. The 11th clan, called the Svit Kur, supposedly relocated to Kalia, one of Lawan's moons. And then the entire fucking moon mysteriously vanished from the sky. As it turns out, that's why you're here. Durandal wants to find this lost tribe of the Svit because he believes they have the power to defeat the 4 once and for all, and he wants to defeat the 4 because they're planning to invade Earth. See, according to him, all the death and destruction he's caused thus far was really just a necessary evil to save humanity. So it turns out the big bad guy from the first game is actually a good guy, or at least chaotic neutral. So who's gonna be the bad guy? Well, turns out it's motherfucking Tycho. Remember the Marathon AI that barely even appeared in the first game before being taken over by the 4? Apparently they rebuilt him and now he's just as unhinged as Durandal. I guess they figured the best way to fight a crazy megalomaniacal computer was to make their own. Tycho is now hell-bent on destroying Durandal as well as his former masters, the entire fucking human race. Tycho shows up with a big-ass army of 4 ships and he and Durandal end up having a huge fucking space battle which ends with Durandal's ship crash landing on a moon called Yoloa. At this point, Durandal beams you up to his ship to help fight the 4 while he attempts to evacuate the surviving Svit and humans down to the planet. So, as with the first game, there's a handful of levels in the middle of the campaign where you're suddenly whisked away to do battle on an alien spaceship. The same ship, in fact, only now it's crashed on a moon above the Svit planet. It's here that Tycho tells you of an alien race called the Jaro, who apparently possessed incredibly advanced, almost godlike technology, including the ability to warp entire planets to different points in space. According to him, Durandal doesn't really give a shit about helping the Svit or the humans, he's actually just trying to get his hands on the lost moon Kalia because he thinks it's an ancient Jaro base, and he wants to use their technology to become an immortal god. So maybe Durandal's a bad guy after all, or at least chaotic neutral. Anyway, after everyone else is safely evacuated from the ship and with the 4 still closing in, Durandal asks you to kill him before he's captured, so you find his giant computer banks and destroy them. You then get captured by the 4 and imprisoned for a month, until suddenly a shitload of Bobs swoop in and rescue you, then transport you back down to the planet. Turns out the human survivors that Durandal rescued from his ship have now set up a base deep below the surface of Lawan. They're being led by a guy called Robert Blake who has a plan to reactivate an ancient Svit AI called Thoth, who supposedly has the ability to contact the lost 11th clan. He then plans to escape with all the surviving humans by stealing a 4 spaceship and flying it back to Earth. So then you have to find and activate a bunch of ancient alien computer banks to be able to communicate with Thoth. Eventually you successfully awaken the ancient Svit computer and he's finally able to contact the long-lost Svitkur clan, who, it turns out, are now a bunch of floaty killer cyborg dudes who help you fight off the 4 in the last few levels of the game. But what happens at the end? Do you defeat Tycho and the 4? Do Blake and the humans manage to escape back to Earth? Is all that shit about the Jaro true? Is Durandal really trying to save humanity? Is he even really dead? And what the fuck ever happened to your girl Leela? Well, play the damn game yourself and find out. Or fucking Google it. Point is, I ain't gonna spoil it here. As you can tell, the story of the game is rich and incredibly involved for what is basically a dumb shooter. So much so that the game is again divided into multiple chapters like a book, punctuated by these badass cutscenes. And I haven't even scratched the surface of all the backstory and details. Head on over to the Marathon Story website to get a taste of that, if you got a lot of time on your hands. Bungie have also dramatically stepped up their level design game for Marathon 2. In the original, the maps were okay, not amazing, but not so bad as to be distracting. In this one, though, they're legitimately impressive. Besides being more cleverly designed, the new maps are much bigger and more cinematic, and include a lot of natural elements instead of just spaceship interiors. Particular standouts for me include a level where you sabotage an underground geothermal power station, then have to run like hell up a series of stairs to escape the rising tide of hot lava. Or a level that takes place inside a giant ancient Sphinx citadel that you have to fight your way up floor by floor until you're thousands of feet above the ground. Or this level with rapidly rising and falling tides where you have to ride the waves to navigate around to various rooms and hallways. Not to mention the alien spaceship levels, which are just as abstract and bizarre as they were in the last game, only now the toxic slime is pink, not green for whatever reason. But I think what I appreciate the most about the level design in this game is that it caters to any playstyle. If you're going for fast-paced action, you can rush in, kill the shit out of everything that moves, and get the fuck out. But there's no time limit, so feel free to explore the whole map at your own pace. If you choose the latter, you can find a bunch of secret areas scattered around, usually by spotting hidden doors and elevators or rocket jumping onto hard-to-reach platforms. Your reward is usually a stash of weapons and ammo, but occasionally you can find little goodies like hidden terminals with extra story details. To illustrate my point, here's what level 5 looks like if you literally just achieve the mission objectives then leave. And here's what it looks like if you explore the whole fucking thing. Which is exactly why the world record is about a half hour to finish the whole game, but I got like 12 hours of gameplay out of this bitch. The NPCs are back as well, and as with the first Marathon, they add quite a bit of depth to the gameplay. Having multiple species involved in the conflict with their own allegiances and motivations was a pretty radical idea for a shooter back in '95, and it results in some of the more cinematic and interesting battles in the game. As I mentioned earlier, the humans, aka Bobs, are back, this time armed and kicking ass by your side, and their AI seems to be much improved, although you still have to shoot them out of the way sometimes. The 4 are still manufacturing fake Bobs too, so you'll get swarmed by suicide bombing clones on some levels, which becomes especially hairy in the human base where you have to pick them out from the real Bobs. The drones are back as well, but this time instead of hacking human drones so they attack you, Durandal hacks the 4 drones to attack them, which is a little ironic. They've also added some native species to the planet, like these Flickta guys who don't really have any side in the war, they just fuck up anybody who steps on their turf, and these flappy things which don't do much besides make good target practice. Having a world filled with more than just bad guys is one of the reasons these games stand out from their contemporaries, and it makes the combat that much more interesting. And finally, I like the graphical style they went with for this game. In the original, I always thought the characters looked a little too cartoony, like it was a kid's game, not a hard sci-fi shooter. For Marathon 2, they've completely redrawn all the characters and objects, adding a lot more grit and detail. I mean, you're still dealing with shitty mid-90s sprites, but now everything looks a lot more serious and threatening, and I dig it. The good news is that literally all my gripes about the first game are gone in the sequel. The AI is vastly improved, the shitty music is removed, the graphics are better, and even the annoying staircase puzzles are completely missing. Hell, in Marathon 2, the stairs fucking make themselves. What really got on my nerves, though, was all the goddamn swimming. Clearly the developers were stoked on their new ability to include liquids in a 3D environment, and it works pretty damn well in places. But you find yourself underwater for a good chunk of the game, and frankly, they hadn't quite worked out the gameplay yet. Swimming controls like shit. You just kind of bob up and down in the water, which is super fucking annoying because the second you submerge, none of your guns work. You have to resort to using your fists, which is realistic and all, but the punch is the least powerful weapon in the game. On land it works in a pinch because running increases your punch power, but underwater you can't really run, so it only works against the weakest of enemies. The rest of the time you just sit there like a nutsack, endlessly punching guys and running out of air. The game engine also treats the surface of the water like a wall, so if you accidentally launch a rocket or grenade downwards, you're fucking dead, which becomes super fucking annoying because there's a ton of levels where you're chest deep in water half the time. Also, jumping out of the water and onto dry land is kind of hit or miss. I can't even tell you how much time I spent bobbing in and out of the water like a jackass trying to reach a platform. So yeah, fuck swimming. The game also has a lot more backtracking than I like. As I said before, the levels in Marathon 2 are way bigger than the original, which is awesome, but there's usually only 1 or 2 save points per level, and you often leave from the same place you came in. So you're gonna spend a lot of time backtracking across these huge fucking maps, which gets pretty damn boring. But despite these complaints, Marathon 2 is still a very impressive combination of action and storytelling, as is the Bungie way. So in my book, this game gets 9 exploded flappy things out of 10, and I highly recommend it for all old school shooter fans. So where can you play it? Oddly enough, Marathon 2 is by far the most widely released game in the trilogy. It originally came out in 1995 as a CD-ROM for old-ass Mac computers. It was later released for Windows 95 as well, making it the only game in the series with an official PC version. It was then bundled together with the first game and released as Super Marathon for Apple Pippin, although who the fuck ever had one of those things? Most impressively, this is the only Marathon game to ever receive an official HD remaster, which came out in 2007 for Xbox 360. This version featured all new higher quality graphics, although it's worth noting that you could turn them off if you preferred the old school pixelated look. But when it comes to playing Marathon 2 on a modern system, look no further than Aleph One, a fan-made game engine that lets you play the whole Marathon trilogy on current Windows, Mac, and Linux computers. This version has a bunch of improvements as well, like support for modern controls and widescreen monitors. And you can even turn on the HD graphics from the Xbox remaster, as well as a bunch of graphical bells and whistles like transparent textures and new lighting effects. Personally, I left all that shit turned off because I'm a slave to the old school. Although I did keep the new heads-up display because the original HUD kinda sucks. Not as bad as the first game, but still. Now, as far as mobile gaming, there are iOS ports of all three Marathon games available for free in the App Store, so you can play it on any iPhone or iPad, although there's no Android version just yet. And finally, if you have an Xbox One, the 2007 remastered release is still available in the Xbox Store for just $10. It's the only modern console release of any game in the Marathon series, so unfortunately there's no version for PlayStation or Switch. But there's lots of options here, so if you have a computer, Xbox, or iPhone, you have no fucking excuse not to try this game. Trust me, you will not regret it. Links in the description.
You forget, Scott. We're in a volcano. We're surrounded by liquid hot magma.
Until next time, Merry fucking Christmas.